Hey everybody, it's Doug Schauf with Remax Oceanside and MakeMaineYourHome.com. In this week's episode of the Make Maine Your Home podcast, I'm going to give you a market update. And in particular, I'm going to talk about 3 things that you need to know about today's market. So let's do this. All right, so I'll start by telling you what the 3 things are, and then we'll go from there. I'll kind of dive into all 3 of them, and then if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can comment below, send me an email, send me a text message, a phone call, send me a pigeon, whatever you want to do. So anyway, the 3 things that I'm going to talk about today is number 1, interest rates. I think interest rates are very important, and they do drive the market a lot. So I'm going to touch on that. Number 2 is inventory. How many houses are on the market and how long that inventory lasts. I've done this before in other market updates, but it's very important on both when you're buying something, talk about options, and when you're selling something, your competition, things like that. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about prices on homes. Again, a super important piece if you're looking to buy or sell. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what prices have done the last couple of years, and then where we think they're going to go in the future. So let's dive right into this. I'm going to talk about interest rates first. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I think what I'm going to do is next week's podcast I'll bring in Casey Hamlin again, and maybe we'll dive into interest rates a lot, because I was amazed at what's happening with interest rates now. For the last few years, people have been talking, interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates are going to climb. We're going to see over 5%, over 6% sometime soon, over the next couple of years. Those are the projections. You probably saw on some of my market updates that that's what the projections were. So I was talking to a lender last week, and they said, man, it's really dipping, and we've been seeing rates coming back down. And I have a graph here that I'll kind of show you. 30-year fixed, mortgage. If you're listening this on the podcast, you might want to jump over to YouTube and kind of check it out there so you can see this, but I'll try to explain it as good as I can. So over the last since 2016, interest rates went, as you probably know, went down below 4%, way down below 4%. Then they popped back up. Over the last year or so, they went way up. We actually did go up over 5. I remember I had some clients buying houses and like, geez, well, we missed the great interest rates. But then all of a sudden, interest rates started coming back down. And, again, in next week's podcast, hopefully we'll talk more about interest rates and why that happens. Interest rates are tied to the bond market. So when the stock market goes up, bonds go down, and so do interest rates. That's the basic explanation of it. And so they did come back down. And right now, I believe they're hovering around 4%. I've heard some local guys say, hey, I really think we're going to be back down in like the 3.5% range. Not sure exactly, but that's what they're telling me. At some point this year, it might be that low. So then, what I also have here is I kind of looked at, what are people projecting, and I'm looking at mortgage rates here. What people think is going to happen, but really over the this next year or so, you'll see here. I'll flash this on the screen, but just about everybody's saying it's going to stay in the low 4s. At least through the end of this year. Beyond that, I don't want to try to make a guess here, because every time I say interest rates are going to fly up, they don't. So here we are again. We're still at like 4%. If you did purchase a house, a couple years ago when the interest rates, or last year even, when their interest rates was up over 5%, might look at refinancing, get that better rate, follow it down, So anyway, that's what's happening with interest rates. And that's very important, because what that does is that drives buyer demand, which has really been fueling this market for a long time. It still makes a heck of a lot of sense to buy a home right now with the way interest rates are so low and continuing to go lower. So it's just crazy what's happening, but it's also exciting. It's a good time to buy. keeps up buyer demand, so it's a great time to sell. It's an interesting market, really is. All right, so now the second thing I'm going to talk about is inventory. How many houses are on the market and all that. This is another key point to what's happening in the marketplace and really what drives it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a graph here. This is a national graph. All these graphs that I show you are national figures. So I'm going to talk about the local numbers here in just a second. So you'll see here on average, over the last 6 months, we're hovering around, 3.5, 4 months of inventory. Okay. 3.5, 4 months of inventory is about the average nationwide. That's a little bit different here in the greater Portland area. So what I did was I looked up, some surrounding towns and calculated out the inventory levels and how many months of inventory we have. Those of you guys, if you're a regular on, on the show, you probably know how to calculate monthly inventory now. I've done this before, but I'll kind of quickly go through how I do that and all that stuff real quick. So what I did was I only looked at single family homes up to 700. So it kind of hits that, middle class, upper middle class, the sweet spot in what people really want. And then to calculate how many months of inventory we have, first thing we do is we calculate how many houses have sold over a certain period of time. Since we're around the 6-month mark of the year, we'll do that. So how many houses have sold in the first 6 months of 2019? Okay, then we divide that by 6. So then we get how many have sold each and every month, and then we figure out what the current what's currently on the market, okay, what the current inventory is, and divide that by that number, and that gives us the monthly inventory. Okay, so I'll dive in. I got about 6 towns here that I looked at, and I'll show you what the differences are between the last time I did this, about 6 weeks ago, and what's happening now. So when I did this 6 weeks ago or so is the last time I did the market update, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, something like that. Our monthly inventory was hovering, around 2 months or even less, some like 2.5 months, but some of them were down less than a month. So that was the last time I did that. It's crazy. This time around, the monthly inventory has gone up a little bit, but not a whole lot. You're going to see it really hasn't changed all that much. It's very insignificant. But remember, nationally, it's hovering around 3.5 to 4 months. Locally, we're seeing still 3 months is the highest one, and some of them are below 2 months. So I'll go through this. In Portland, we had 234 sales this year so far. Again, this is just single family home, no condos, no multi-units. That's 39 sales per month. The current inventory is 81. That's 2.07 months worth of inventory. South Portland, 123 sales, 20 per month. There's 26 houses on the market now. That's 1.3 months, way below the 4-month average nationwide. Scarborough, 132 sold. That's 22 per month. 58 current homes on the market. That's 2.63 months. Falmouth, 51 has sold. That's 8 per month. 27 houses on the market. That's 3.37 months worth of inventory. That's the highest one, 3.37 months, which is still below all the national averages on all the 6 months. Cape Elizabeth, 46 sold, 7 per month. There's 10 houses on the market, 1.42 months. Westbrook, once again, comes in at the lowest, 91 sales. That's 15 per month. There's only 13 houses currently on the market. That's 0.86 months, less than a month worth of inventory. Okay, so you can see inventory drives a lot, because what happens is it creates a lot of buyer demand. Again, there's already buyer demand because of the interest rates that we just talked about, but when the inventory is low, when a house hits the market, it's like a frenzy. Oh my God, I got, what's going on? I got to get it. And that's what's happening in this marketplace. Now, from a seller side, it's important to know that too, because then you can kind of gauge what your activity may or may not be based on, your home, your price point, things like that. And if you have any questions on your personal house or your own town, let me know. I'm happy to help out, because I do work in a lot more towns than just these 6. So I'm happy to help you out in any way. So anyway, there's that. Now we're going to move on to the third thing, which is prices. It's a very important piece to the puzzle in any market. And prices I have again, I have a couple of graphs here, and you'll see here year over year price changes. You can see we had, as high as like 6.7% growth. It's been dropping, and this year so far we've seen 3.5-4% growth. You can see that, which is okay. That's fine. That's a normal market. But if our interest rates come back down and our inventory stays low, that might change as we go on. So there's that, and then things also change per price range. I thought this was kind of interesting. You'll see here, depending on what price range you're in, it could be drastically different than what I just showed you. Below 100,000 are like the cheaper houses. We're not seeing a huge increase on that. That's where like a lot of the investors are showing up, especially here locally at that price point. That's where the investors are. They're buying the fixer-uppers, things like that. We're not seeing huge increases there. But when you get in like the sweet spot, the 250 to 500,000, the 250 to 750, we're seeing some big gains. Even 750 to $1 million, we're seeing some huge gains. Okay, and that's really the sweet spot. That's where most of us are. Between 250 and $1 million. I mean, I can't afford $1 million house yet, but you can see that's kind of the sweet spot. That's where almost everybody is, and that's the type of growth that we're seeing. It's amazing. The $1 million plus are seeing a lot less growth, especially now, and that's why it's pulling down the total numbers. It's if you really look at it though, whatever price point you're in, that's the number that you want to check out. So, and then let's see, what I have here is forecasted year-over-year price change and what's going to happen, for the rest of the year, that type of stuff. And what we're seeing here, really, since we're up here in Maine, I'm only going to show you this. We're seeing projected or forecasted for the year ending up at about 5.9% here in Maine, which is fantastic. Oops, I dropped that. Which is fantastic growth. I mean, I got to be excited. I mean, a normal market is 3-4%, so anything above that is just amazing. So that's what we're seeing for the rest of this year. We should see a pretty normal market, or at least what we're used to, status quo, I guess you would say, for the rest of this year. And then beyond that, it's really hard to say. A lot of people are talking about, hey, a recession's got to come. The stock market's got to come back down at some point. Things like that. When it comes to housing prices and the housing market, if the stock market and the economy comes down, it's okay as far as housing goes. I know it's not necessarily okay. I don't want people to lose their jobs and things like that. But typically when there's a recession, the housing market doesn't get hit all that bad. The problem is we're kind of gun shy from 10 years ago when the housing market caused the recession and housing prices just went right down the tubes. So this one though, I think is going to be, I've heard a lot of people say it's going to be kind of like a soft landing. Like, when this recession comes, it's kind of, as far as housing goes, which is what I'm concerned about, housing goes, it's going to be kind of a soft landing. We're not going to get hit nearly as bad. So watch out reading headlines, things like that. The newspapers, the media, they want to get headlines. They want to get clicks. They want to get people all excited. They want to get people afraid. So they read their stuff, all that kind of stuff. And that's what happens. So that's kind of my closing to all this. I hope this was helpful for you. 3 things that you should know about today's market: interest rates, inventory, and prices. Hopefully this was good information for you. If you have any questions, comments, comment below. Send me an email. Send me a text message. Give me a call. And of course, if you want to sell your house, we could use some inventory. So let me know. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. And remember, if you're going to make Maine your home, you don't have to do it alone.